You have probably had one of those mornings where you wake up, the heat is off, and the house is just cold enough to make you not want to move. You pull the blanket tighter, you stare at the ceiling, and eventually you get up, turn the thermostat up, maybe make something hot to drink, and within 20 minutes you have completely forgotten it was ever cold in the first place. That is your entire relationship with winter. A minor inconvenience that modern life solved before you even had to think about it. But here's the thing. For most of human history, there was no thermostat. There was no insulated wall between you and the outside air. There was no jacket made from synthetic fiber designed in a laboratory to trap your body heat. There was nothing between ancient humans and winter except whatever they could figure out with their own hands, their own minds, and whatever the land around them was willing to give. And winter was not just uncomfortable. Winter was one of the leading causes of death for most of human history. Not because people were weak, but because cold at that level, sustained over weeks and months, is one of the most efficient things in nature at shutting a human body down. And yet here you are. Which means they figured it out. Not once. Not by accident. But generation after generation, across hundreds of thousands of years, in some of the coldest places on Earth. The way they did it is one of those things that starts out sounding obvious and ends up being genuinely remarkable. Let's start with the most important thing they had, which was not fire. It was each other. Before any technology, before any tool or shelter or clothing, the single most effective thing ancient humans had against the cold was body heat shared between multiple people. Groups huddled together for warmth at night in a way that was not just practical, but essential. A single person sleeping alone in genuinely cold conditions without modern insulation loses body heat faster than they can replace it. But 3 or 4 people pressed together share a combined thermal output that keeps all of them warmer than any one of them could manage individually. This is not a small thing. Researchers studying modern hunter-gatherer groups in cold climates have found that sleeping arrangements in winter shift dramatically. People who normally sleep apart move together. Children sleep between adults. The group becomes one collective heat source. And this is part of why community was not just a social preference for ancient humans. It was a survival mechanism as literal and physical as food and water. Isolation in winter was not just lonely. It could kill you within days. But body heat alone was never going to be enough once temperatures dropped far enough. And that is where fire comes in. Not the romantic campfire of popular imagination, but something far more deliberate and carefully managed than most people realize. Ancient humans did not just light fires and sit near them. They built their entire daily existence around fire management in winter in a way that required real knowledge and real skill. Keeping a fire alive through a cold night takes effort. The wrong wood burns too fast. Wet wood produces smoke without heat. A fire that goes out at the wrong moment in the wrong conditions is not just an inconvenience. It is a threat to every person near it. Archaeological evidence from sites across Europe and Asia shows that ancient humans were selecting specific types of wood for specific purposes going back hundreds of thousands of years. Hardwoods for sustained overnight heat. Softer woods for quick ignition. Bone and fat added to fire when wood was scarce because both burn with a dense concentrated heat that wood alone cannot match. They were not just making fire. They were engineering it. And where they made that fire mattered just as much as how. The earliest shelters were not built for comfort. They were built to keep fire alive and to trap the heat it produced. Caves were used not primarily because they were dry, but because they held heat. A fire at the back of a shallow cave creates a convection effect that keeps the interior significantly warmer than the outside air. Shelters built from mammoth bone and animal hide, which archaeologists have found at sites in Ukraine dating back over 15,000 years, were designed with the same principle. Low ceilings, small openings, everything oriented around keeping generated heat inside and keeping outside air out. These were not primitive structures thrown together in desperation. They were the result of accumulated knowledge passed down across generations about exactly how to build something that would keep a group of people alive through months of cold. Now here is the part that most people never think about. Clothing. We think of ancient humans as wearing rough animal skins draped loosely over their shoulders, and that is more or less the extent of it. But the archaeological record tells a very different story. Needles made from bone have been found at sites dating back over 40,000 years. Actual sewing needles, small and precisely made, which means ancient humans were not just draping hides over themselves. They were cutting material and stitching it together into fitted garments designed to trap body heat and keep cold air from reaching skin. Genetic evidence has shown that the human body louse, which lives specifically in clothing rather than hair, diverged from head lice somewhere between 80,000 and 100,000 years ago, which means humans have been wearing fitted enough clothing for long enough that an entirely new species of parasite evolved to live in it. That is how long ago clothing stopped being a loose drape and became something closer to what we would recognize today. And the materials they used were not just any available animal skin. Evidence from multiple sites suggests that ancient humans were selecting specific animals specifically for the quality and insulating properties of their fur. Wolverine fur around the face of a hood because it does not collect frost from breath the way other furs do. Layers of different materials combined because the principle of trapped air between layers for insulation was understood long before modern outdoor gear brands started advertising it. They were not guessing. They were applying knowledge that had been tested and refined across hundreds of generations of winters. But surviving winter was never only about staying warm. It was about having enough food when the land stopped producing it. And this is where ancient humans showed a kind of forward thinking that is genuinely hard not to be impressed by. Evidence of food storage goes back tens of thousands of years. Meat packed into permafrost to keep. Dried fish and plant material stored in quantities that could carry a group through months without hunting. Fat rendered and stored because it is the most calorie-dense food available, and fat is what the body burns first when temperatures drop, and it needs to generate heat from inside. They understood, without any of our language for it, that the body's ability to stay warm is directly tied to how much it has to fuel itself with. A cold body that is also underfed is a body that is running out of time. So winter preparation was not something that started when the cold arrived. It started in late summer. Months of deliberate effort to accumulate enough that the group could survive the months when accumulation was no longer possible. And through all of it, across every cold night and every difficult winter, what kept ancient humans alive more than any single technology or strategy was the same thing that kept them alive in almost every other difficult circumstance. The fact that they did not face it alone. The knowledge was shared. The fire was shared. The food was shared. The warmth was shared. Winter was not something any one person survived. It was something the group survived together. And the next time you pull that blanket tighter on a cold morning and reach for the thermostat without thinking about it, what you are really doing is the latest version of something your ancestors were doing for hundreds of thousands of years before you. Keeping the cold out. Any way they could.